For those of you who are just joining, we're just going to give folks a minute or two to get logged on, so please hang tight. For those of you who are just joining, we're just going to give another minute or so for folks to get logged on, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So just hang tight. All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. I got some people asking what the music was, so I put it in the chat. My new favorite song, so thought I'd share it with all of you. Okay, so let me share my screen and we will go ahead and get started. Okay, so hopefully now all of you can see that. If you can't, let me know. I would say if you can't, Shoshana, chime in and let me know, because I am not monitoring the chat feed. Okay, so on that note, I wanted to let you guys know. So why are we talking about state of the school? So I realize that we have used most of our webinars over the last 2 years to address COVID updates and COVID related topics. And as I talked with different individuals, I realized that we weren't making much time to talk about non-COVID topics. And I wanted to make sure that we set aside some time just to reflect on where we've come over the last 2 years, give you all of you a summary of some key updates that might have gotten lost in the shuffle, and to highlight where we are headed as a school. As I was mentioning, so we're using the webinar format. And what I have learned about the webinar format is that there may be somebody who can run a webinar and at the same time monitor the chat and monitor the Q&A and like respond in real time to questions and everything, but I am not that person. As a result, we're trying to sort of shift towards using the webinar format more for situations where either it's unidirectional transfer of information, or, which is the case today, or where we have a panel of people calling in from all different places that we want to present, or seminars, things like that, where we want to make it accessible. That is why you'll notice that, like, we're using the chat to sort of push out information or links to stuff that I'm talking about, but we are, for the most part, not monitoring the chat and the Q&A during the presentation. That being said, I am very aware that some of the topics that I'm going to talk about today are ones where it would be super helpful to have multi-directional transfer of information for us to be able to hear from you. And so what we are trying is a new approach, which is that we're hosting conversations. So you'll see those advertised around topics that we really do want to have that kind of dialogue. The first set of these that we've rolled out have been around sharing space together in the HRC. And we are continuing to have those and have more scheduled for next week. And are happy to schedule them for folks who might have missed the first round of them and want more of them. And we are also planning to have a series of those small group conversations where we actually really have dialogue, also on the topic of telework and work from home and how we're going to handle that going forward. So I just wanted to give you a heads up about that. I'll talk about that particular topic more later, but just to say that's why you aren't able to see me responding to questions and things like that in real time. We did receive some questions in advance, and I'm going to try and address the ones that I can briefly during the presentation today as appropriate. And if we have time at the end, some of them are really specific questions, and I'm happy to stay on afterward and have a conversation to address those questions that we got in advance and that were very specific. Okay, so with that, I would like to start today's session by centering ourselves on a land and labor acknowledgement. And this particular version is one that I love. It was written by our own Tess Matsukawa, who is a wonderful member of the advising team for the Public Health Global Health undergraduate major and has served as one of our equity, diversity, and inclusion coordinators. So thank you, Tess. So here is the land acknowledgement. It is vitally important for us to know the longstanding history of where we are and what has shaped the context of the land we inhabit. The University of Washington acknowledges the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of the tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. Land that was stolen by European colonizers. Land that was stolen from the Duwamish, who are still here and continuing to honor and bring light to their ancestral heritage. This country that we live in was built on stolen land, with the exploited labor of enslaved African peoples, as well as the exploited labor of underpaid Asian and Latinx peoples. These acts of colonialism, white supremacy, and anti-Blackness are the history of this country, as well as our ongoing and current reality. We want to honor and recognize the lives, knowledge, and labor of Black and Native peoples in the past, present, and future. There is an immense need for action within the School of Public Health and other systems that is centered on liberation for Black and Indigenous peoples. This requires understanding the context of where we are, our own positionality within those systems, and a dedication to justice-based action. And I can't emphasize enough, now I'm shifting to my words, but thanks, Tess, for that beautiful piece. I can't emphasize enough this need for action, not just through our work in public health, but also within our own organization, whether that's at the level of programs, departments, the School of Public Health, or UW as a whole. And that's a theme that I'm going to come back to frequently during today's talk. I also want to, oops, and I just realized that I was not forwarding my slides, so let me get on that. All right. I also wanted to acknowledge that, that All right, clearly I'm having problems even just managing my slides today. Okay, that while we're not focusing on COVID updates today, that the last 2 years have been traumatic, not just due to the COVID pandemic and the losses that have come along with it, but also due to the inability to be present with loved ones as they go through major life events, the heightened racial violence that we've seen in our country, political divisions and upheaval, and wars and conflict. And one of the most challenging issues that I've seen, both in the world at large, but within our own community as well, has been that these different traumatic events have had differential impacts on members of our community. And for that matter, it's almost impossible to tell how these different traumas have affected other people in our community in particular, whether it's someone, and whether that someone that you're working with or learning with has had an even worse day, week, month, or year than you have. And that has meant that we have all needed to learn to extend grace to each other, which is a phrase that I've used frequently, but I think is really, it comes to the core of many of the things that we'll talk about today. That extending grace to each other, giving them the benefit of the doubt that they have been through a rough time, and being able to do that even when we ourselves are exhausted and feeling spent. Furthermore, the uncertainty and the need to constantly pivot that we've been experiencing over the last 2 years has been particularly exhausting and stressful for most people. And challenges related to working from home and learning from home have impacted individuals differently and further exacerbated access issues for many members of our community. For other members of our community, the transition back to working in person and uncertainties about childcare, transportation, changing guidance around disease transmission, and just learning how to be back together with others for long periods of time during the day has been even more challenging. And finally, I want to acknowledge that we have been experiencing a huge societal transformation where people have taken the time that they've spent alone during the pandemic to reassess their priorities. And that has meant that we've seen people across the nation resigning from their jobs or looking for new jobs at unprecedented rates. In particular, people in leadership positions are really exhausted, and many are choosing to take a break from those positions. And we see that both within our own organization, certainly within public health at large, and across the country in general. And those decisions that are made for really good reasons on an individual level and indicate people following their hearts and doing what's best for them can result in even greater upheaval for the people who feel left behind. And the resulting workforce shortages that we experience do mean that sometimes the people who are remaining in the workplace are being asked to take on extra tasks at a time when honestly all of us are finding our regular workload to be challenging. And so as a result, you've heard me say over the last 2 years that we need to focus on a culture of less is more in order to scale back on expectations for workload and have a more sort of human work environment. But I also understand that as we move towards that culture of less is more, that some members of our community experience frustration when they find that services that we used to take for granted may not be available, and also that it just takes longer to get things done. And I guess I just want to say that all of these reactions are normal and understandable, but certainly contribute to sort of the place that we find ourselves in today. So given all this, as we come back together, move into what I'm hoping is a new phase of the pandemic where COVID is at least on the wane and hopefully under control, that I recognize that stress and mental and physical health challenges are continuing to be and will continue to be major concerns. So despite all of that, I've chosen to focus today on the many outstanding accomplishments that members of the SPH community have made through their work together in our school, particularly over the last 2 years. And I guess I just want to express that I do that not in ignoring this backdrop of trauma and exhaustion, but rather because I do genuinely want to celebrate what all of you have done. And also because I fundamentally believe that the ability to have hope and to find joy in life are core to our collective humanity and are what are going to help us recover from these collective traumas. So, as we think of who we want to thank, I would like to give a special acknowledgement to our administrative professionals in the school. So administrative professionals are critical to the success of any organization. And for us in the School of Public Health, our outstanding administrators play an essential role in our journey of tackling the greatest health challenges in our region and around the world. They're united with all of us in a commitment to do a world of good. And the administrative professionals in our school play critical roles in educating future public health leaders, conducting groundbreaking research, and supporting healthier communities. While we thank them, or hopefully thank them, for their hard and essential work every day, today is Administrative Professionals Day, which is just a reminder to demonstrate our appreciation of their contributions to our shared goals and to the positive culture that we enjoy in our school. So I encourage you to join me in celebrating and thanking the many people who are the engine that fuels our progress and the glue that holds us together across departments, programs, research centers, and the School of Public Health. I also want to give a special shout out to the 10 awesome SPH students who were selected to be in the Husky 100 this year. We are so proud of and inspired by you. And as I mentioned, we're going to be using the chat to provide links to different items. So hopefully Shiva will drop a link in there to a site where you can learn more about our 10 fantastic students in the school who are named to the Husky 100. I also want to mention that we have some new members of our team, and I'm going to be highlighting some of the work that they have done in collaboration with all of you, but also recognize that you may not be aware of these transitions, and so wanted to highlight them before we sort of launch into the rest of our conversation today. The first of these is Wendy Barrington, who I am delighted to say is our inaugural director for the Center for Antiracism and Community Health. And I will be telling you more about the launch of that center later on today. I also want to acknowledge Barbara Bucaro, who is the relatively new faculty director for the Public Health Global Health major. And you will also hear about the incredible growth that we've seen in that program and how that has really fueled our ability to provide stable financial footing for the school, in addition to training fantastic public health professionals. Next, I'd like to thank Deepa Rao, who has served for the last year as Interim Senior Associate Dean, and we will be announcing this week, has agreed to serve on an ongoing basis as Vice Dean for faculty. When I asked Deepa to step into the interim role, it was with the idea that she would take over some of the responsibilities that Jared Bateman had around faculty professional development, faculty promotions and reviews, and also those situations where we have difficult issues that need to be resolved that involve faculty. But I also really was excited that Deepa was willing to join our leadership team because of the incredible commitment that she brings to equity, diversity, and inclusion issues, and the anti-racist lens that she brings to this job. So I've just been incredibly grateful over the last year to all the number of times that she has helped us to look at the policies and approaches that we have in our school through an anti-racist lens. And I'm super excited about the work that she's going to continue to do in the Vice Dean for Faculty role. Next, I want to introduce Shiva Shafi, who is our new Director for Marketing and Communications. So Shiva joined us almost a year ago, not quite a year ago, and you'll hear lots about the work that she's been leading, and with her team and with communications folks across the school. Again, brings a really wonderful EDI lens to the communications work that we do in the school, and also a great background in marketing, and is really helping us rethink the way that we frame our communications programs. And then finally, I wanted to thank and acknowledge that India Ornelas has stepped in as interim chair of the Department of Health Systems and Population Health. And we have launched a national/international search for a new chair, but are just incredibly grateful to India for her leadership while we're conducting that search. And again, you'll hear about great contributions that India has made in other contexts later on today. So finally, that was a long-winded way of getting to my introduction to the body of what I wanted to talk about today. So to give you some context, when I interviewed for the job of Dean of the School of Public Health here 4 years ago, many people asked me what my approach to leadership is, sort of a standard interview question, and what my vision for the school would be if I had the honor of joining you as your dean. And I think it's worth repeating that my philosophy of leadership was then and is now that we should be employing the values and best practices from our discipline, which is public health, to how we run our own organization. And so you'll see me coming back to this throughout my presentation today, because it's really framed a lot of the work that we have done as a school, and is really a through line for much of what I'm going to talk about. I also wanted to reiterate that I firmly believe in a service leadership model, which to me means listening to members of the organization, our school, about what their values and priorities are, and using those insights as guiding lights for the work that we do as a school. So while this may not be a bidirectional conversation or multi-directional conversation today, please note that I am very committed to hearing from all of you. At the time that I interviewed, I heard from both stakeholders in the school and from the central administration that morale was at an all-time low. So for those who don't know, this was in spring of 2018. And there were many reasons that people brought up. One of the reasons that people referred to was unresolved conflict and trauma related to what many people refer to as our incident in 2016. And that incident, while traumatic, has certainly given rise to some really important work in this school, and we will talk about some of that work today. Another thing that I heard was contributing to low morale at the time was that many faculty in the school felt like independent contractors, feeling like they didn't get much support from the school and hence did not have much allegiance to the school. What I heard from the central UW leadership team was that from their perspective, a core problem within SPH was that we were the only school where activity-based budgeting, or ABB, was being pushed out to the departments. At all the other schools and colleges ended at the point of the school, and the schools and colleges then allocated money across the departments in a non-formulaic way. And it certainly was the opinion of the central UW leadership team that pushing out of ABB was a key contributor to stakeholders in the school, particularly faculty, feeling like they were on their own financially. So coming in as dean, my top priorities were to launch strategic planning in the school in a way that was consultative. And so I was very committed to hiring an outside firm that used consultative approaches, and we ended up going with Pyramid Consultants for that, who did a great job. but also making sure that that outside firm was working directly with a steering committee that was made up of stakeholders who really represented the many axes of diversity in our school. And the goals of that strategic planning exercise were really to better understand the collective values and priorities of our community. And then secondly, the other big priority that I had coming in 2018 was to figure out how we might address these core issues related to faculty salary support and the school's budget allocation model that were contributing to poor morale in the school. So as those of you were here then know, these efforts came to fruition under the leadership of then Vice Dean Jared Baton, and really coalesced during summer of 2020, which unfortunately was just as the pandemic was really hitting full steam. And honestly, I did get questions from many people, both internally and externally, about why we were launching and spending a lot of time on two major initiatives during this global pandemic, which none of us thought would last for so long. And at the time, my response was, and I still think that this is the case, that during times of strain and difficulty is when we most need to know, first of all, that that the school, people to know that the school has their back. And so our faculty needed to have the knowledge that they would have core financial support, and that our departments would have the resources, each have the resources that they needed to thrive. And also that knowing what our collective values and priorities are and having those articulated would be absolutely essential to making good value-based decisions at any time, but particularly at difficult times. So that is where we then, and I'm going to move this if I can, and this may mess things up. So, all right, hold on just a second. I may have to reshare. All right, can you guys see? Can I get from Jashana or someone on the comms team? Can you see the regular?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry about that little transition. So now I'm going to sort of transition to the body of what I wanted to talk about with all of you guys today, which was the outcomes of sort of that strategic planning and the implementation of that strategic planning. And here, hopefully Shiva will drop into the chat a link to our strategic planning website. The 5 areas that were identified as being core to having the kind of impact that we as a school wanted to have were collective culture of meaningful change, education for leadership and transformation, methods to research to practice continuum, equity, justice, and anti-racism, and reputation and visibility. And I'll say here, and this holds true as we move forward talking about mission, vision, and values as well, that it would surprise me if every single one of these items resonated with every single member of our community. They're really designed not to reflect us as a collection of individuals, but rather to summarize what we as a community hold true amongst ourselves, and help us to differentiate the work that we do and the strengths that we have and the things that we care about, not just in comparison to other schools at the University of Washington or other programs of public health that are in our region, but also to compare to other premier schools of public health across the nation. And so I have found this framework to be incredibly helpful. I wanted to give thanks to all of you who contributed to the development of the strategic plan, and all of you who've been working on implementation across each of these important areas. And in deference to the fact that these are what were called out by critical stakeholders in our community as being priority areas for the school, I'm going to frame the updates that I'm going to give you according to these areas, but I'm actually going to go in reverse order. So I'm going to start with reputation and visibility. So, and you may be wondering, why would I start with reputation and visibility? Because it's, for many people, it sounds like, oh, reputation and visibility, that's just sort of like, how do we look from the outside? And I guess what I want to convey to you is that the process of defining what we want our reputation to be and the things that we want to be visible for and how we're going to accomplish that can be really transformative. And so I want to share those things with you and hope that, again, that when you see these statements, that they will resonate with you. Perhaps not all parts of them will resonate with you, but at least that you will see the things that you hold dear and love about our school encapsulated in those statements. So first update that I want to go through is that Pyramid has been working with stakeholders across the school to finalize the updated SPH mission, vision, and value statements. Those are now completed. In addition, Shiva and her team have developed a school-wide marketing and communications plan. I'm not going to get into a huge amount of detail on that, but I do want to also give you some information about how our SPH campaign for students, which is the signature part of our development portion of advancement work through the strategic plan, how that's been going. So at this point, I just, again, want to thank all of you who contributed to the development of the mission, vision, and value statements, whether it was through answering the survey or through focus groups. And for sure, to thank all of you who generously support our students. It has made a huge difference. So mission, vision, and values. So Shiva's going to pop into the chat for you some information. We are planning on launching these new, what they're called assets, but for you and me, like templates and PowerPoint presentations and new letterhead and cards and all that kind of stuff that are labeled with this, but wanted to introduce this to you. So our new mission statement is or encapsulated by a world of healthy people. This is our vision of what we are striving for. And then you can see across the bottom the values that contribute to that. So again, this is the summary of the vision statement. Our mission, where we landed, is to solve our greatest public health challenges and co-create health equity with communities in the region and the world. We do this by centering community as we rigorously pursue knowledge, put learning into practice, and train the next generation of visionary public health professionals. So again, you'll see this echoed through many of the parts of the plan and the updates that I'm providing. And then finally, our values. So these were really hard to come up with, and we got a lot of very helpful feedback from folks. Pyramid really pushed us to think about what were values that differentiate us from other premier schools of public health that really encapsulate who we are as a community and what we're trying to accomplish. And where we landed there were values of collaboration, value of community, valuing equity, diversity, and anti-racism, echoing the campus's impact value. Meaningful positive impact is a huge value for us here in the school. Valuing innovation, this ties in again with our research mission. And valuing shared learning. So it's not just about training the next generation of public health professionals, but also us learning from them and all of us learning from the communities that we serve. So where we end up, again, is this a world of healthy people with a focus on collaboration, community, equity, diversity, and anti-racism, meaningful positive impact, innovation, and shared learning. And these are really provide then the foundation for how we communicate about the things that we're trying to accomplish, both internally, but also externally. And one of the ways that that helps is when we're trying to raise money. So a big focus for us over the last 2 years has been the SPH campaign for students. We wanted to give you an update on that. So the total dollars raised for that have been, so this is funds for students, student support funds that are either for directly supporting students in the form of fellowships or emergency funds, for infrastructure to support students, for instance, like for health sciences education building and our new laboratory facilities, and also programs that are directed at supporting students. So for instance, internship support, so or practica support. So again, total dollars raised over the last 2 years, over $3.2 million. Critically, we've really expanded the number of donors who have given. So we have, over the last two years, almost 300 first-time donor households who have, and a lot of those folks have entered into our community through Husky Giving Day, which I know many of you worked really hard on. And this year we were very much focused on raising, through Husky Giving Day, raising money for student emergency funds and other student-based support. So all told, during this period of time, we have had over 565 households give over 975 gifts. So huge thanks to all of you who contributed to the development of the mission, vision, and value statements, have worked on the campaign for students, and those who have generously supported our students and continue to do so. So next I want to move into updates on equity, justice, and anti-racism. So one of our big accomplishments over the last 2 years has been the development and deployment of the Level 1A and Level 1B Universal Anti-Racism trainings. And most of you should know about this because the team that developed this has done trainings that have reached over 1,000 people over the last 2 years. They also were invited to do a training specifically for the Board of Deans and Chancellors and the President's Cabinet in February of this year. They have also done extensive evaluation of the trainings and shared a really lovely report with both school-wide, that had both school-wide and departmental EDI activities, and shared that with both the SPH leadership team and also the EDI committees and different programs and departments. And I also want to give a huge shout out to that we appointed the inaugural director for the Center for Antiracism and Community Health, ARCH. That director is Wendy Barrington, and I'll tell you a little bit about what she's doing as well. So for those who weren't here when this was launched, the Universal Anti-Racism trainings, while they had their origins in that racist incident in 2016 in the school that really created a lot of self-examination, the further impetus for this was the racial violence that became so prominent and was featured so heavily in the across the country in the spring of 2020. And in response to that, over 300 student, staff, and faculty in our school called for not just our students to be trained in anti-racism, but our faculty and staff to be trained as well. And so I just want to give a huge thanks to the members of the EDI committees across the school who all contributed to developing the learning objectives for these trainings, and then helped to create the training modules. And of course, to our central EDI team pictured here who have been running those trainings. Oops. So as I mentioned, they've trained over 1,000 individuals. You can see here by quarter how the trainings have been rolled out. There still are more people that need to get trained because we constantly have influx of new people, but huge thanks to everyone who's completed both the level 1A and level 1B trainings and who have participated in the various affinity groups and other activities that have been ongoing for the last 2 years. And if you haven't done your level 1B training yet, I wanted to give a shout out that there is the next training is on May 10th and you can still register for it. And Shiva will drop that link into the chat box. I'm also super excited to announce that the Art Center was officially launched in February of this year to coincide with Black History Month. We couldn't be more fortunate in the selection of our inaugural director, Wendy Barrington. And I want to just acknowledge the huge lift that she has undertaken, not just to launch the center, but really to rally the community across campus to work towards creating better structures within our institution and incorporating better practices, particularly around faculty hiring. And at this point, also just want to really give a shout out to everyone who worked so hard to raise the money for Arch, to get the commitments from the provost, Joel Kaufman, for making the commitment from the school, and the people who had the vision and the fortitude to really push on this to make it happen. I did want to highlight, if you haven't watched it yet, Wendy gave a great webinar last month about, actually, might have been in February, but I'll have to go back and look. A great webinar about Arch, and part of the reason that we were so excited about recruiting her to be inaugural director was the really great vision that she has established and the great way that she is gathering input from stakeholders across our region and from researchers working on critical race theory and anti-racism across the country. So just to highlight that and to say, if you haven't watched the webinar, please do. Next, I want to give you some updates related to methods to research to practice. I hope it would go without saying, but sometimes it doesn't. So I will say definitively, we continue to be an extremely well-funded and productive research powerhouse. So not only are we one of the top funded schools of public health in the country in terms of research, and one of the most impactful in terms of the research that we conduct, but we are consistently either number 2 or number 3 at the University of Washington in terms of the number of research dollars brought in by any school. So School of Medicine brings in more research dollars than we do, and then School of Public Health, the College of Engineering, and the College of the Environment are, we sort of vie for second place there. So I'll give you a little bit of update about what we're seeing in terms of grant dollars coming in. I did want to thank the Research Council, which has finalized the research roadmap, which is fantastic and highlights research priorities and recommendations for the next couple of years. I wanted to mention that we have opened as of fall 22, new updated consolidated Roosevelt laboratories. And then also something new, which hasn't been announced, but you'll be hearing more about in the coming months, is that we had a fantastic task force work together to look at shared IT services, and they have developed a set of fantastic recommendations for improving the quality and security of IT infrastructure in the school that really lays the foundation for a lot of the work that we're going to be doing over the next year or two. So first of all, I just wanted to reassure you, in case you had any concerns, that we are bringing in even more grant dollars and than we were pre-pandemic. And also, perhaps equally important, a higher percentage of the grants that are being submitted. So this is on the left side. The purple is the number of grants we submit. That that gold color line is the number of awards. So you can see for a pretty steady number of grants submitted, a little bit of increase during the pandemic, we've seen a huge increase on the success rate of those grants. And that's really important. I also want to mention that one of the fantastic things about our research portfolio is that we get grants from a really diverse set of funding sources. And that's part of why our funding has been so stable, despite dramatic changes in terms of the funding for individual agencies or foci of individual agencies. So it's really provided great stability across the school. I mentioned that we have a fantastic research council with representatives across the school. They have spent the last year developing this research roadmap, which I'm hoping Shiva may be able to put a link to in the chat, but if not, look for in the future a link to that site. I know they're reworking the website. And identifying priority areas for where we can provide greater support across the school to help facilitate the research that all of you are doing, related to anti-racism in research and in collaboration with ARCH, providing professional development and support for research staff, providing support for investigators, and then also providing support for training grants as well and training grant applications. And they've done a lovely job of laying out the timeline for doing this. I just wanted to give a shout out that if you haven't checked out the strategic plan website, here's the link to it, and Shiva will drop it in the chat box as well. There's a really lovely drop down list of topics here for each of our different sections of the strategic plan. You can drill down and see what the proposed deliverables are, and whether or not it's not started yet, or whether it's in progress, or whether it's completed. So it's a really good way to sort of keep tabs on what's happening with strategic plan implementation. And huge thanks to Stephanie Farquhar and our fantastic IT group for getting that up and going. Also, huge thanks to all the people who participate in developing the research roadmap. This is a big undertaking. Also, really, really grateful to the Research Council. On a multiple times per week basis, they are pushing out information about research opportunities and funding opportunities throughout the school and providing coordination. So we're really grateful to them. I mentioned that we have upgraded and consolidated labs that opened at our Roosevelt facility in fall of 2022. So this, let's just say 21, sorry, that's a typo of mine. That's because we don't have labs in HRC, and we were moving out of the F wing. So we consolidated all of our labs over in Roosevelt and did a huge upgrade. None of this would have been possible but for the tremendous generosity and support of Gil Oman and Martha Darling, and also huge thanks to the faculty and staff who really worked hard to make the timeline work and get everything done so that we could get everyone moved in there before we had to vacate the F wing. So it's a really beautiful facility. If you haven't toured it, I highly recommend it. I also mentioned that we have this incredible task force that's been working on looking at what investments are needed in our shared IT infrastructure. I don't think that we have made the report available on the web yet, so we don't have a link for you, but we will be pushing that out. Some of their key recommendations were to hire a chief information officer who will work closely with a school-wide standing committee on shared IT services that will work on implementing the task force recommendations. That we also really need at least a part-time IT security officer to develop a detailed security plan in consultation with that school-wide committee. And then also that we in the OD should make really substantial investments in equipment and software across the school to support shared IT infrastructure. And again, I want to give a shout out to Gil and Martha in terms of their gift to the school, which funded the Roosevelt lab upgrades because we had budgeted money from our school budget to cover those upgrades. And so by giving us the gift to cover the upgrades, it freed up a huge amount of resources that we now have available for school-wide investments. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving. So this is definitely one of those key investments that we're making by the resources that were freed up as a result of their very generous gift. So again, huge thanks to all of you who participated in that shared IT services task force. And in reward for your hard work, I'm probably going to come back to you and ask you to help me figure out what the job description should be for these new folks that we're going to hire, and to really flesh out some of this implementation plan and hopefully serve going forward on at least some of you on the committee that we will have. Okay, next updates are in the area of education for leadership and transformation. Hopefully you noticed, because we pushed out a lot of information about it, that we went up for reaccreditation by the Council on Education and Public Health, and we're successfully reaccredited for another 7 years. That's a huge amount of work, and just literally dozens of people across the school who worked really hard to get that done. We also, in the last year, had our MHA programs reaccredited by CAMI and our registered dietitian programs reaccredited by Ascend. Also, huge list from those groups. We implemented our new MPH integrated core in academic year 2021, even online, because that was the way 2021 was. So huge lift there. In the last 2 years, we've launched a new MS and biostats, and also a really cool new program called the Doctorate in Global Health. It's the first of its kind. We've seen increased demand for our programs and also increased enrollments, and those together have significantly stabilized our finances within the school. And then we also have exciting, a new building, the Health Sciences Education Building, scheduled to open late summer, but definitely in time for fall classes. So MPH core curriculum, I'm not going to go into details of this other than to say it has been just a huge multi-year lift by so many people. Shown here are our year 2 instructors plus Olivia, who's our fantastic MPH core staff member. And this is, I want to give a shout out again to India, who continues to serve as our MPH core director. This has just been a huge transformation in our school and really brought us in line with being one of the most innovative MPH programs across the country. So just huge thanks to all of them and all of you who worked on the original MPH re-envisioning. You may be wondering what's happening with applications. They are on the rise. So this is graduate applications in purple. And in case you're worried, so we've seen this across the country, huge increase in demand for public health programs. We have much more gradually increased our graduate enrollments and tried to really think about what we can handle with the faculty that we currently have. By contrast, we have seen huge increases in enrollments at the undergraduate level. So that's the purple bar at the bottom, where you can see we went from almost, barely any undergrads in 2012 to having hundreds of undergraduates enrolled in our degree programs this year. We're getting, so really tremendous. And the importance of that cannot be understated. So one really important implication of that is that we are able to meet the demands of our state for public health workforce. So we're just so fortunate to live in a state where the legislature has allocated funding for increasing the public health workforce, and these are the students, along with our graduate students, who are meeting that demand. Because of that undergraduate program increase, We've also seen a substantial increase in our allocation from the central administration under activity-based budgeting. And that has really stabilized our finances as a school. So huge thanks to all of you, but particularly the faculty and staff in the two big undergraduate majors who created both outstanding training programs that meet student and employer needs and also just really transformed us financially. As I mentioned, we have a new health sciences education building opening in fall 2022. That's that building on Pacific that you probably have all seen. Expect to have tours available over the summer for faculty and staff and a grand opening in the fall. And we will start teaching classes in there in the fall. So lots of really cool classroom spaces and interaction spaces for students. And these are shared across the 6 health sciences. So great opportunities for interprofessional education. We have also begun planning across the 6 health science schools on renovation plans for the T-Wing, which would happen in out years. Okay, and finally, I wanted to give you some key updates about collective culture of meaningful change. So one of the biggest updates that you're hopefully all aware of is that we implemented our new faculty compensation plan. And in parallel, something that we haven't talked about a huge amount is that we moved away from pushing out activity-based budgeting to the departments and changed our budget allocation model. We continue to assess and adapt our approach to telework and hybrid telework based on the lessons learned and the feedback that we're getting. We've moved into the HRC and we're learning how to work together in this new environment, and we are hiring fantastic new faculty. So again, coming back to our values, these values of community and collaboration and the commitment to equity, diversity, inclusion really were underlying in the vision for the new faculty compensation plan. So for those who weren't here, this was implemented in July of 2020. And the goals were to provide a larger base of support for WOTRF faculty who by code don't have guaranteed support, and we're getting it varied tremendously across the departments, but on average sort of 5 to 10% support. So increasing their base of support to 30% and increasing the base for research faculty to 10%. And that base of support, again, the resources for that large for the WTRF faculty, that differential largely comes from this increased teaching mission that we have. And so in the process of establishing that, we also set standard norms and expectations and compensation for non-research activities across the 5 departments in SPH. So again, if you haven't looked at it, we recently updated that to reflect feedback that we got this past year. So please check out the updated plan. We did a survey in March of 2021 just to get a sense of like, were we on the right track? We're eager to see how year 2 has gone. We got about a 52% response rate and a pretty good response in terms of people feeling better supported by the comp plan. And I would say the outliers here, which are understandable, are largely for those categories of individuals who are not supported under the comp plan and who we would love to be able to support, and just we just financially haven't been able to swing that. So I just want to, again, give a huge shout out. The department administrators and all of the staff in the school are involved in budgeting and payroll. This was a huge transition for the school. So to thank them for their critical work. So again, I wanted to emphasize that a main reason that we were able to afford the new compensation plan was due to increased tuition revenue going back to the growth of those undergraduate programs. So you can see that in the growth of these purple bars, even just over the last couple of years. The part that we haven't talked about a huge amount, and Uli and I will definitely plan a future webinar or conversations around this, because it's clear that we need to do a better job of talking about this, is that in order to make the faculty compensation plan work, we had to address growing inequities and budget allocations between the 5 departments in SPH. And so in response to that, we changed the budget allocation model to the departments from one that was based on pushing out ABB, so based upon a formulaic approach, to one that looks at the needs of the departments and their ability to provide critical services to stakeholders within the departments, and trying to make that more equitable across the departments in the school. We are working hard to try and maintain faculty size. So that great resignation that you heard about, we're constantly in academia seeing shifts of faculty across different places. We do a large number of searches each year, and our goal is not to grow as a school, but to maintain steady state. So we lost a little bit of ground. But I just want to give a shout out to the faculty and HR staff who have worked so hard on all of these different faculty searches, particularly over the last year, where they have really done a fantastic job of rolling out best practices from the Office of Faculty Advancement in terms of hiring processes. And as a result, we've just been able to recruit incredibly talented new faculty to SPH. So if you haven't met them, please reach out to our, and I can see that one of the names on here is wrong, but we'll get that fixed. Please feel free to reach out to our new faculty, welcome them, and we're starting to get responses back to our offers for next year, and expect another big crop of fantastic new faculty again. I also wanted to comment briefly on telework and hybrid telework. I would say this is totally a learning as we go and adapting to the new reality. We did conduct a survey assessment in the fall of 2021 and heard loud and clear that people wanted even more autonomy and definitely wanted the flexibility that they had during academic year 2021 extended. So we extended the hybrid telework agreements through June of 2022. We are coming up on that deadline, and I know that people are eager to know what comes next. And so we will be hosting a series of conversations later this spring about what our new policies look like, but I want to reassure all of you that we are not going to just return back to the way things were. So we have got great responses that people felt like they enjoy the autonomy and flexibility of being able to work from home, and that supervisors felt like staff were doing a fantastic job under those circumstances for the most part. So we expect to be able to extend that kind of flexibility, but we're really looking at it from the lens of how do we frame this in terms of long-term telework plans as opposed to sort of this constant COVID situation. So thanks to all of you who responded to the survey, and please join us for the conversations in the spring. Hopefully all of you have noticed that HRC is open. It's a beautiful new building. It is totally different from the spaces that we had previously. And so we are still learning how to work together in this new type of space. If you haven't joined us for one of the conversations about that, please do join us in one of the upcoming sessions. We are working on formulating guidance and sort of rearrangements to help deal with some of the issues that have come up. Finally, I know we're a little bit over, but I want to remind you that commencement is coming. So the university is having 2 separate commencement ceremonies. The regular one for the class of 2022 will be on Saturday, June 11th at Husky Stadium at 1:30 p.m. The classes of 2020 and 2021 are invited to come back for a full commencement ceremony at Husky Stadium, this campus-wide, at 1:30. That is right after the SPH graduation, which is also on Sunday, June 12th, on Rainier Vista. So we'll have tents set up at 9:30 a.m. So you should have received information about this, but if not, hopefully Shiva will put a link in the chat box, but we look forward to seeing you there. So finally, huge thanks to the SPH leadership team, including our department chairs and department administrators and program directors who have really provided stability over the last couple of years, and really appreciate everything that you've done. I really appreciate our elected faculty council and our curriculum and educational policy committee members. We had a great all faculty meeting where they talked about the incredible work they've done, particularly on our academic affairs handbook. So if you weren't able to attend that, definitely check that out. There should be a recording available. Thanks to each of you who have taken on leadership roles or extra responsibilities or endured additional hardships over the last 2 years. And finally, thanks to every one of you who has worked over the last 2 years to solve our greatest public health challenges and co-create health equity with communities in the region and the world. Whether it was through centering community as you rigorously pursued knowledge, putting learning into practice, or training the next generation of visionary public health professionals, you are making the world a better place. And I'm happy to be here with you to support you in that. Thanks. So at this point, I think we're going to stop the recording, but I'm happy to stay on. There were some very specific questions that we got through the online, the pre-survey online. And so I'm happy to go through